Join us September 12th in New York City as Digiday, Modern Retail, and Glossy bring together brand and agency leaders to connect as industry experts from Colgate, PepsiCo, and more dive into the rise of retail media and how it's begun to mature, providing an exclusive deep dive into the best practices and winning strategies. For a limited time, we're offering $100 off with promo code RETAILMEDIA, no spaces. Again, that's promo code RETAILMEDIA with no spaces. Learn more and register today at digiday.com/retailmedia. Join us at Glossy's Beauty and Wellness Summit from November 11th through 13th in Napa, California. Influential beauty and wellness leaders will meet to discuss strategies and pain points, discover innovative tech, and ultimately make valuable business connections through one-on-ones and casual networking. For a limited time, we are offering $200 off with promo code GBS24, no spaces. Again, that's promo code GBS24 with no spaces. Go to glossy.co/beauty summit for more information and to secure your pass today. Hello, and welcome to the Glossy Beauty Podcast. I'm your host for this episode, Lexi Lebsack, West Coast correspondent at Glossy. Today, I sit down with Chloe Green-Vamos, the Vice President of Global Innovation Strategy at the Estee Lauder Companies. In this role, Chloe leads global research and development strategy, oversees innovation portfolio insights and analytics, as well as enterprise innovation planning. She's also the Chief of Staff to Estee Lauder Companies' Chief Research, Product, and Innovation Officer. Chloe represents a new kind of executive role at a company like Estee Lauder, one that heavily relies upon collecting and understanding all types of new and emerging digital and consumer data, as well as the newest forms of media, technology, and social media. I wanted to ask Chloe about how social listening is driving innovation and how she uses AI to better the company, which includes a custom AI-powered tool made by Microsoft. I was also curious about Estee Lauder Companies' reverse mentorship program, which pairs an executive with a Gen Z staffer to help the execs better understand new ways young shoppers think about and use technology. All of which we discuss in today's episode. Chloe, welcome to the Glossy Beauty Podcast. I'm so glad to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super, super excited.
Yeah, me too. We're going to talk about so many good things here. Well, I want to talk about your role at the Estee Lauder Companies, but let's start with a little bit of background. Tell me a little bit about you. Where'd you go to college? How did you sort of start this amazing career?
No, happy to go through. So I went to college at Boston College, and I studied French and communications, actually, which maybe is surprising considering my current role, which is very numbers and data and strategy focused. But it's really been so foundational for my career for a couple of reasons. I ended up working at, two huge, French fashion houses, and beauty companies. So I worked at Chanel and L'Oreal. So the French background definitely helped me out there. And then I studied communications, which, in everything we do, even if it's data focused at the end of the day, understanding the consumer, how people communicate, interpersonal signals, all these things are super helpful in the work that I do today, which is, again, trying to translate insights into a strategy. And, for that, we really have to listen, and we have to listen through many different mediums. It could be, in person, it could be, in social media. So, really lucky to have had that background. And, I actually started my career in fashion and retail. I started as a buyer for Saks Fifth Avenue, and I did, a variety of different categories: shoes, designer ready to wear, private label cashmere. So if you were shopping at Saks in 2013 during the holidays, I designed the cashmere sweaters that you saw.
Oh my gosh.
So just, I sort of, that was my first dabble in product development and product innovation, and sort of what inspired me to continue to do that throughout my career. So after that, I joined Chanel, where I was a buyer for the US markets for shoes, other accessories, and eyewear. So, I was choosing the right assortment for the US consumer, and, a variety of categories. Things that we were trying to sell were, surfboards and, ballet flats. So I think it was just a really great learning experience of, at the end of the day, what really informs the strategy, for when you're a buyer is also that consumer, understanding that market. And so it just really trained me both to sort of look for trends in data, but also to look for trends with consumer face-to-face interactions, or with the people who are working on, the ground floor, seeing your consumer every day. And that's such valuable experience. And, ultimately I decided to dip my toes into beauty full force at L'Oreal. So I worked for L'Oreal Paris, skincare and makeup, which was a big shift after having worked in luxury for over 5 years. Then to take a totally different sort of step in mass beauty. And so, I went from Chanel to trying to figure out, what's the display at Walmart or Target. So very, very different, different consumer, different strategy, but really great learning. And then, I found my way to ELC shortly after that.
Wow. Okay. Everything you're doing now with this patchwork that you have in your background now makes perfect sense to me. So how did you get your start at Estee Lauder Companies?
Yeah. So it was very, fortuitous and kind of kismet when I look back on it. So after working at L'Oreal for a few years, I went to get my MBA at Columbia. So I was going to business school full time, had the intention to sort of get some consulting experience. So I had my sights set on actually, management consulting. And one semester into business school, I was missing being close to the product. And Columbia has a great network, and we have a number of Columbia executives that were alumni. And so I found an internship opportunity, and I think that was January of 2019. And I have been on the same team ever since. Now that the team has changed, my role has changed, but I'm still working for the same leaders. And it's, been amazing to sort of see the journey. Sort of when I started, we were a sort of savvy, very lean insights organization that now really is a full-fledged engine for the company. So we were a very small team back then, and we've sort of found our place at the core of every brand, region, innovation strategy.
Wow. And such an important part of the company. So you've been with Estee Lauder Companies for 5.5 years now. Tell us about your current role, VP of Global Innovation Strategies, and you're a chief of staff as well. What does this all entail?
And sort of my role today, what I love about it is no 2 days are alike, and it's very dynamic and very fast paced, as you might expect. But I'm chief of staff to our head of research, product, and innovation. And the team that he leads are formulators, scientists, engineers, regulatory specialists. It's really, runs the gamut of experts. And my role is really to link all of their expertise to our broader innovation strategy. And really what that, how I approach the role is leveraging the expertise of all of those around me. I may not be the regulatory expert. I may not be the formulation expert, but I know where the growth in the market is, or the growth in a category is, and ensuring that we're also piecing together insights from each of these different functions to be making the best decisions for our business and ultimately making the best products for our consumer.
Wow. I'm very looking forward to seeing where your career goes. I feel like you are on like a straight shot right now. In the best way. I mean, it's like so many of these things you're doing are so vital, but they're also like fairly new, right? So it's like data and the many ways in which brands are collecting data to better learn about their customers is such a huge focus in the industry right now. Talk to me about how you and your team are learning about changes in consumer behavior and how that is ultimately driving strategy for the whole company.
Yeah. And this is something that's been just really exciting, especially in the last, few years. We have more data than we've ever had, multi-channel, super rich and granular detail. And really the power, to sort of analyze and glean insights is, bigger and better than ever. And the approach we have is really this saying we call the math and the magic. At the end of the day, we have to crunch the numbers. We have to sort of stitch data sets together. And, that's for me is really where the insights are, is connecting the dots. We have consumer panel data, we have product testing data, we have regulatory data, ingredient efficacy data. And it's really bringing all of that together with also the understanding of where the consumer is at. So what's trending to be able to respond faster and faster. So this math and magic is really how we approach it. And the magic is really where we sort of align our products or our proposition, our technology to the consumer at the right time, at the right price point, in the right channel. And it's really this like precision approach to be able to meet her where she is. And I think what's exciting is also, not just, our internal data, which is super, super rich, but we're getting more and more external sort of consumer insights through social media. The feedback loop now is so fast. Before this is, data would, you would get quarterly, and we have live real time data sensing models that we're using for our day-to-day jobs on all these different things, whether it's how do we craft a better communication to a consumer, and, all the way to how do we craft a more efficacious formula.
Wow. Can you share any anecdotes about things that you've like recently learned about the ELC customer?
Yeah. So I think one thing that is always, mind blowing to me is just also how fast the consumer preferences can change and shift. So I think, what is as interesting as the insights itself is the dynamic nature of it. And we could come back and look at the same consumer profile, 6 months, a year, and there's a totally new insight. So I think that's one thing that tells us is we just have to continue to listen to our consumer. But I think one thing is the consumer groups themselves are becoming more fragmented. There are more brands in the market today than, significant exponential more brands in the market today than there were 10 years ago. And that's, continuing. And ultimately, the more products that are offered, there's more routines and more preferences and dynamic changes within those preferences. Some specific ones that I think are really interesting is when we look in the past, a lot of preferences were based on, like core benefits, big, fast benefits. And ultimately, you have to tailor your products to really, hit, some of these key needs, whether that's like anti-aging, acne, et cetera. What I think is really interesting now is how nuanced some of these subsegments are becoming. So within anti-aging, there's anti-aging plus 10 different things. And those are really where the customers are, they're not just looking for one solve. They're looking for anti-aging, acne, post procedure care. And you really need to serve not just the key core benefit, but the occasion, and the potential sort of like sub benefit, that they're looking for. So I think that's really, really interesting. I think one of the biggest drivers that we've found now is actually texture and sensorial. So this idea that the consumer isn't just looking for efficacy or technology, but how it feels and how it makes them feel. So it's almost those two levels of how does this product feel on my skin? But we've seen, over the last couple years, the sensorial and texture and forms, just that being much more prevalent driver of innovation and of preferences. So they may love the technology and what it does, but if it doesn't feel right, that's sort of a pain point.
I feel that. I feel like sometimes I can't really tell how the beauty industry consumer feels about technology, how they feel about the latest innovation or biotech, or like all of these things that from the industry point of view, we see as these huge things that are coming in and changing things. But it's like what you're saying. It's like, I can't tell like if they actually really care about that stuff or if they just want this amazing experience and they want to meet their needs.
Yeah. And I think there's some, core concerns that have, I think, come to the forefront. One that I think is interesting, and it's not surprising because it's a core concern that's been around for a while, like sensitive skin. And we have a number of brands in our portfolio that cater to sensitive skin. But this idea that sensitive skin was a niche, like sort of like a niche need, and just a small segment of the population has sensitive skin has sort of, really been sort of refuted in all of our consumer research. And it's a nuanced need, and it takes it's very, very regionally focused. So what sensitive skin means in the US versus China is very different. It's very different in Japan. And the needs and the ingredients to address these needs are also really different. And so I think sort of where we think about, tailoring, whether it's product development or even communications, it could be the same product, but it's super important for us to sort of address those needs outright. And the solve is really in claims and communications, and that's where we've invested a lot of time and sort of focus in AI helping us do that.
Yeah. And AI is such a big part of this. AI, social listening, machine learning, all of this is all kind of like as interwoven. But I'm curious if you could give us a little more information on sort of how Estee Lauder Companies is using AI with the business, if there's any sort of day-to-day or practical or bigger picture too. But yeah. How are you approaching AI?
Yeah. So AI is a super critical focus area for us. So we've been investing in the space for some time now, and we really see it as a key tool across multiple fronts. But really where it's helping us is on speed. So speed to insights. So we're wanting that feedback loop of learnings to become even faster. And then we're wanting to launch products faster. And this allows us to do so. So we're using end-to-end sort of approach to AI. So on the insights front, we've partnered with Microsoft to build a trend sensing kind of organ that we use.
Oh my gosh.
So combing the market for buzzwords that then link to our internal product portfolio. So we have an internal AI, generative AI that matches our product portfolio with buzzy trends that are out in the market. And this is something that our marketers have at their fingertips. And most recently, it's been super helpful for us jumping on the Brat Summer train. We have a number of different skincare sort of trends we've been able to sort of link with our existing products. But that's just on, how do we get our consumers our existing products and get them sort of educated and interested. But we also have AI helping us launch new products. And that's really through multiple means. We're using AI for formulation to actually predict efficacy of actives and ingredients. So we can use historical data models on ingredients to actually predict the efficacy of how ingredients interact with each other, how efficacious it'll be on the skin, which has been, an amazing, tool for us. We're also using it on safety and stability. So whenever we're, creating a new product, we can quite literally create a AI simulation of the product and its attributes and see if it'll pass all the tests that we need it to launch. So this is something that is taking a 6-month process down to days, which is amazing. And I think it's also just giving us, again, that feedback loop faster, which is allowing our formulators, our scientists, our marketers, it's allowing them the time to actually innovate and think creatively instead of maybe being focused on, some of these more administrative type processes. So the value is huge for us and the time that it's allowing us to speed the process.
Wow, that's so interesting. And you're so right. It's like if you have like this sort of beginnings of a project, or if you're monitoring things like while you're sleeping, then of course you're going to be able to move so much faster. That's fascinating. Wait, let's go back for a second to the marketing, the Microsoft marketing one. So you'll like sort of put in keywords, or it'll comb, all of your products for like keywords like glowy or like things like that. And then when things trend, it kind of like connects them or like
that's
works
right.
like a
Okay. Yeah. So an example would be like summer glow, and we have our product portfolio within the generative AI within the GPT, and so it'll pull up all of our products that we can sort of story tell around glow. And what's even like more amazing is we can actually use the GPT to help write concept and copy. So we could quite literally put into the chat, I want this, copy to be for a Gen Z consumer in, California. And it would tailor the copy to actually be for that consumer. So it's gotten really advanced, and the more we use it, the better it gets, which is amazing. And of course, we are always sort of balancing the technology with our creators and our marketers who know the voice of the brand, who know the voice of their consumer. So there's always that checks and balances in place. But it's been a really like fun tool. I would say, like, more than anything, I think it's also really fun for our teams to use, and it's been really effective.
That's so interesting. When we met a few weeks ago, you also shared an anecdote about like sort of identifying the like latte makeup trend very early. How did that work? And then how did you sort of like leverage that early finding into, I guess, a campaign? Or you tell me.
Yeah, that's right. So latte makeup was one of the, I would say, like hallmarks of this trend sensing process that we've built. And it really is like, it's a process. It's of course at the core of it is this tool, but it's also all of our users and sort of this ecosystem, and new way of working that we've created. So we actually have AI that looks not just at, our copy, but combs the market. And so starting to see, during that time, sort of that shade story of latte makeup. We looked at all the hashtags, all of the, consumer engagement. And so once we started to see that trend, a number of our brands picked up on it and made it their own. And so then we had a sort of portfolio approach, and it was our EMEA market that actually sort of pioneered this with us. They saw it, they acted really quickly, and we became sort of the leaders of this trend, and a number of our brands really capitalized on it.
Are you a beauty or wellness brand looking to showcase your work alongside the top in the industry? The Glossy Beauty Awards provides the opportunity to recognize your company's work with categories including Skincare Brand of the Year, Beauty CEO of the Year, Beauty Brand of the Year, and many others. This is your chance to showcase the campaigns, initiatives, products, and practices that make your brand truly stand out. Join the esteemed ranks of past winners like Rare Beauty, Olaplex, and Ulta Beauty. Discover more and start your entry at glossy.co/awards/beauty. Okay, so along this theme of technology and being very forward thinking, you really blew me away when we met. I was so floored when you told me a story about how Estee Lauder Companies has a reverse mentorship program. Tell me about that.
So this program is super amazing because it pairs together the executive leaders, including the CEO, with a reverse mentor, oftentimes Gen Z or millennials, and they tackle some of the biggest sort of questions and opportunities in the company. And most recently, Carl Haney, who's our chief product research and innovation officer, his reverse mentor trained him on AI. So we had an informative session. It was a live training. We actually used AI to create a new brand to sort of like ideate and brainstorm. And all of our executive leaders, including our CEO, have reverse mentors. It's very formalized, and it's just a great mechanism for learning. And that, I think reverse mentorship is so important because it always puts into perspective the consumer and how the consumer is changing, and acknowledging the different perspectives within the company. And, we've seen some amazing ideas come out of these reverse mentor projects. We've done, trend workshops in many brands. We have product launches that were born out of these reverse mentor brainstorming sessions. So it's a great sort of internal panel that we have and learning source.
Wow, it's really impressive, and also so smart for the younger staffers as well, because it's like, when are you getting that opportunity nowadays to have face-to-face time with the executive team?
Absolutely, and it's really one-to-one, and it's that consistent sort of mentorship and relationship. And sometimes Carl will email his reverse mentor and say, "What do you think about this?" And it's this it's such a great internal check, I think, for us, and we use it and for the biggest, most important things. And I think that's a differentiator for our company, and it's been such an asset.
Yeah, 100%. Sometimes I feel like in beauty or wellness, or maybe even outside of this industry, but sometimes a brand or a company will come out with something and I'm like, kids don't want that. I'm like, there was nobody who's 22 of the company you could have gut checked this with. What are we doing?
Yeah. And that's exactly what we use it for. There were, I won't say exactly which launch, but there was a lip gloss launch that, they were trying to decide, do we put these, high efficacy ingredients in this lip gloss? And some of the marketing leaders were like, no, we don't need it. Let's just launch it faster for less expensive. And the sort of reverse mentor group was like, no, you need it to have hyaluronic acid. You need it to have these oils and, key ingredients. And it was 100% the right call. And the leaders will say so, which I think is really amazing. And just giving that voice to sort of the younger generation, which will be the leaders of our company one day.
Yeah, I love that. So smart. Okay, so I have a question about the trend cycle, staying on this topic sort of, but the trend cycle is so short nowadays. Product development timelines are so short and getting shorter, and everyone just is working faster and faster and keeping up with this. And I know that we already talked a little bit about how AI is sort of helping to cut down on the timelines here, but can you share a little bit about sort of how your team stays competitive around, product launches and ingredients and, all of this stuff?
Yeah. And I think, one of the biggest tools we have is sort of our data and insights engine, and, AI definitely enabling that. I think the modeling that I sort of spoke about earlier does allow us to really speed certain processes, where it allows us to iterate faster. And I think that's where, that's where the value added is happening in the product development process, right? Is at the core, there are certain things that you need to make a good moisturizer. It's kind of what you need to make a good cake. And we know that we have amazing formulators, scientists, engineers, and we know the target of what we're wanting to accomplish. But it's in that iteration of finding the fine tuning, and this like machine learning, like AI enabled modeling allows us to focus more on the iteration process instead of, kind of like I mentioned, the testing process, which is crucial and key and necessary. But we really focus on maximizing the iterative process and doing that even faster. And I think the other thing is we have such a library of amazing products, past and present. Like we have a product vault, so to speak, of products that were formulated but maybe didn't launch for whatever reason. So we kind of have this internal treasure trove, both of existing products and legacy products that we can draw inspiration from. We can revive when sort of the moment is right, where we have like the consumer brand match with the concept. And we've used that a number of times. And I think that's another way that we address speed, is using our sort of internal asset bank. And then on the trend piece, trends, I think how we're approaching it, we have like a very segmented approach to trends. There are certain trends that are sustaining and we know are going to be long-term and are going to create these big macro shifts, seismic shifts in how the consumer thinks about things. And we've seen that with certain, whether it's a technology or even, a behavior. So we approach those trends very differently than we would, the latte, sort of like shade moment. And by upfront creating a segmented process of how we address the two differently allows for the agility. We almost have these swim lanes, whether it's from a product launch perspective, the way that we approach a product that is going to be the best in industry, blow every technology out of the water from a performance perspective, has a very different profile than a special shade launch that we want on counter for the holidays and I think that's where the segmented process for speed has allowed us to go faster and also just be more tailored through like all these different means. And AI is helping us, but also I think ways of working and learning from our historical database is the unlock there.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I want to get into that vault. I thought you were saying like just legacy products, but also unreleased products.
Yeah. For every, I don't know what the numbers are, but for every product that launched, there's one that hasn't, and at least, and there's just a treasure trove of sort of, not just like, again, ingredients and ingredient combinations, that we just have to, again, and that's the work that I try and do and working with all the teams is we see the trend, we see the opportunity in the market and the category for the consumer. And then we bring that product to life for the sort of new nuanced need. And it's great if we already have a product in market that serves the consumer's need. That's the best case scenario. But we're an innovation organization and we always like it to be better. And we don't stop at making our products better, and addressing whatever new consumer preferences and needs come our way.
Not to put you on the spot, but curious, these like big, like industry shifting changes that you mentioned, can you think of like one or two that you're seeing happening right now?
Yeah. So one of the big ones I would say is, it's sort of in response to just aesthetics and like medical aesthetics and procedures in general. We saw this happening, for a few years in Asia, and it's definitely come to sort of Western markets now. But the idea that consumers want instant results and they're willing to pay to have a procedure done, whether that's Botox, filler, laser treatment, chemical peel, like it really ranges. But these procedures are becoming more and more available. They're less expensive. I think there's less stigma. And so we sort of have to understand that our consumer, it's not an either or. And I think that's what the learning is. It's not an either or, it's an and. But we have to tailor our products to work with this new foray, this new like regimen that includes medical procedures. So we have products, that are coming on market, and, we're testing to see, does it prolong your Botox? And can that be a claim?
Oh, interesting.
Does it, have, and we have an amazing Clinique product that is equal to a laser treatment. It's not always a head-to-head, so it can work in combination and, help with like post-procedure inflammation, hydration, healing. But also, can it actually make your medical procedures better? And I think it's a great challenge for us, and it's a great learning from our consumers, but that's a seismic shift for sure.
Wow, that's so smart. And it's so true. I feel like 10 years ago, people would talk about, getting a procedure, the dermatologist, and it's like, what do I use afterwards? And they're like, well, they'll give you a dusty old tube of arnica, and that's what you smooth on. And it's like, how is there no amazing, line that helps with recovery and like sort of like work synergistically?
Exactly. Smart. And to have like, again, it's like to make that like a luxurious experience, like to have a post-procedure, like reparative mask. Like, so it's like you took this moment to do something for yourself, and you want to then like continue, not just from like an efficacy healing perspective, but also like have a self-care moment. And I think that's the other thing is, and it definitely happened during COVID, but the emotional need for some of these categories really sort of created seismic, changes. Like the fragrance category itself, home, bath and body, candles, now, I've always loved candles. I'm like looking left, right. I have candles, not quite all around me, but a handful. But even, body mist, body oil, like, self-care can mean many different things. And I think the fragrance category really took a new angle on it, and the consumers really responded and continue to do so. So that's one we're continuing to watch, like what's the next sort of consumer shift we'll see in the fragrance category.
Yeah, that's smart, because those sales are just going up, 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 up. Every quarter, we're like, well, fragrance is dominating once again. So much opportunity.
Yeah, and it's an interesting from a consumer, perspective. Different olfactives have started to sort of peak. We see more men, younger men buying and really getting into the ultra luxury fragrance, and then sort of the idea of genderless, olfactives, like they're, in some ways, I think that's another like key shift is in many cases, the way that we look at consumer segmentation is no longer generational or gender. It's much more about an ethos and a specific cohort. And as the market's fragmenting, there's like more and more granularity to that. And I think it's our mission to continue to sort of like listen and respond to those changing preferences. And we've definitely, we've had great innovation in the fragrance space, and we've got more coming.
Yay. I want to talk about live selling, which is having such a huge moment. And of course, we know is really big in the different Asian markets, but not that many brands are doing it so far. How are you approaching live selling at Estee Lauder Companies?
Yeah. So live selling really like relies on, I think, like that pulse on the consumer, because you have to act and react so quickly. And so from the perspective, and again, I'm sitting in a sort of like value chain role, for live selling to work for a corporation like ours really requires sensing that trend fast, having the stock in supply, having that, key influencer, or, brand spokesperson relevancy, the right messaging, to your point, the right market, to really deliver that message. So I think the way that we approach it is like all about precision, and it really relies on that deep granularity and end-to-end vision of continuity, to ultimately identify the trend and deliver it quickly. And, live selling is as fast as it can get, quite literally. So I think it requires, a very, tailored approach, and, one that I think we're continuing to evolve, and I think the way we think about different modes of growth, we have certain brands that it lends itself to more than others. And I think it's also finding that like brand authenticity pairing of sort of who is it right for, what consumer is it tailored towards, and then, a very tailored approach so that it's authentic to the consumer.
Yeah. And finding the right platform, right? If you're like doing it on one of the social platforms, or you're doing it on like an e-com site.
Absolutely.
It's so interesting. So interesting. I feel like there's going to be so much more of that coming in the future, or maybe not. Who knows? Who knows how the market will sort of respond to all the live selling. But I have one more question for you, and that is about reformulations, which I know are very common in beauty. And I feel like there's more reformulations happening right now because of Mokra, but I don't know if that's actually true. But so many reasons to do reformulations. How does Estee Lauder Companies approach reforms?
Yeah. So reformulations are a core part of our business. It's necessary for continuity, and we do a number of reformulations every year. And the way that we approach it is we use it as an opportunity to make our products better. So whereas, many brands and many indie brands, may see this as a hurdle. And it's definitely not one that is, to be taken lightly. And it's time intensive. One has to be very rigorous on the approach. But we actually use reformulations almost to our competitive advantage, where we use it as an opportunity to look at our hero products. How do we make it better? And relaunch it with, sometimes it's better packaging. Sometimes it's new enhanced ingredients, potency, new claims, maybe a different consumer target based on what we know today versus when it was originally launched. So we take it and sort of use it as a potential for new consumers to learn about the product.
Cool. I like that sort of POV on reformulations. I think that's really smart. Do you have any sort of overarching advice for any companies out there who are sort of, navigating this sort of in their innovation strategies, navigating all the influx of data, enterprise marketing, all these amazing things that you're doing? Do you have any like overarching advice?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think the overarching advice is, with data, maybe it's cheesy, but like with data comes responsibility, because I think you have to be very granular in sort of your approach and your learnings. It can be very easy to look at a data set, make an assumption, and sort of go strong into one direction based on that. I think for us, like a key part of the data, an analysis is the validation. And we don't ever make a decision based on one data point, right? Like we have to look at multiple signals. So I think the importance is having, not just, one stream of knowledge. So it's like trust your experts, your employees, trust your consumers, trust your next generation, but look for multiple signals. And I think that's ultimately like the golden rule. And then I think also it's also okay if you see a trend, you identify a trend, and then it changes. I think the other thing is you could spend a lot of time on an analysis, make an assumption, and then 2 months down the road, it's reversed the other way. And I think also the acceptance that we're living in a very dynamic market and things are going to change, and accepting that when it comes and just getting faster at sort of recognizing the signals for when trends are changing. I think that's the other piece of advice I'd have.
Those are great piece of advice. Thank you. Well, thank you so much for coming on the Glossy Beauty Podcast.
No, thank you so much.
Yeah, this is such a great conversation. If people want to follow you, are you on any social platforms? Are you doing any like public facing stuff?
I am on Instagram, so please feel free to find me on Instagram or LinkedIn. I'm at CG Vamus, and you can find me on LinkedIn.
Perfect. Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you, Lexi.
And thank you for listening to this episode of the Glossy Beauty Podcast. If you enjoyed it, please leave us a rating and a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you're listening. And for even more coverage on the beauty industry and more, please visit glossy.co/beauty.